And let's talk about riding a skateboard. So you push off the ground and start moving, right? According to Newton's first law of motion, if no other forces are acting on your skateboard, you will continue to move, right? But what actually happens? Well, the skateboard stops. And the reason that happens is because of friction. So friction is the force that opposes motion when between two surfaces that are touching each other. The amount of friction depends on two things. It depends on the kind of surface you have and the forces that are pressing the surfaces together. So what causes friction? Well, even though a surface may look smooth, if you magnify the surface, it isn't smooth. And you can see that picture below. So everything is made up of molecules. We know that. The molecules come together and make bumps. Some surfaces have molecules that have larger bumps and some have smaller bumps, but every surface has bumps. And this is a picture of a blown up surface that appears smooth, but it really isn't. So again, what causes friction? It's these micro welds that occur when two bumpy surfaces rub up against each other and they stick together. And it causes a micro weld. So a tiny little two bumps that are stuck together. So the greater the force of the object, the greater the force of the micro welds. And the greater force is needed to overcome those micro welds. So you can see a big heavy train would be really heavy, and so that's going to be pushing down with a lot of force, and just so it's going to need a lot of power to overcome that in order to move that train. So static friction is one kind of friction that we're going to talk about. So suppose you have an empty cardboard box. For some reason kids love to play in these, right? So your little brother or sister gets in the box and wants you to push them around in it. And you try to move it and it's too heavy to lift, too heavy to move. So you try to push it and it doesn't move. What kind of acceleration would you have? Well, that would be zero acceleration, right? And so remember Newton's second law of motion. If the acceleration is zero, the net force is zero. Therefore, because you can't move it, another force is being applied and canceled out your force. That opposing force is friction caused by the micro welds that between the bottom of the box and the floor. And this type is called, a friction is called static friction. So static friction is the friction between two surfaces that are not moving past each other. In this case, your push is not large enough to break the micro welds and the box remains stuck to the floor. So if you see these arrows up here, if I'm pushing to the left with a force of 10 newtons, that means the friction is equal to 10 newtons or greater than 10 newtons. So the box is remaining stuck. So sliding friction, let's talk about sliding friction. So to help you move your little brother, you decide to ask a friend. So you both push, and slowly, but not easily, the box starts to slide across the floor. When you stop pushing, it quickly stops moving. Sliding the box is difficult, and there is still resistance. So although you have overcome the micro welds, there is still a sliding friction occurring. So sliding friction is the force that opposes the motion of two surfaces sliding past each other. Sliding friction is caused by the micro welds constantly breaking and then reforming again as the box slides along the floor. To keep the box moving, you must continually applying a force to overcome the sliding friction. So rolling friction. Have you ever seen a car stuck in the snow? So every time that driver steps on the gas, the tires just spin and spin and spin, and the car doesn't go anywhere. This is because there isn't enough friction between the slippery ground and the tires. So how can you create more friction to get the tires to move the car? So this is why some people carry around sand or gravel around in their trunks in the winter time, or they can put a board under each of their front tires. friction between rolling tires and the ground is called rolling friction. Rolling friction works partially because of microwells. Rolling friction is much less friction than static or sliding friction. And that is why it's easier to use a dolly than pushing an object or pushing your little brother in that box.